So, when the POCO X3 Pro was announced and showed to the world, there were lots of people saying that this is the best smartphone ever that they can offer, and because it's using a Snapdragon 860 chipset at such a low point. Well, that is indeed an impressive feat, as in to fit a Snapdragon 800 series chipset into a phone of this price range. And that sounds a little bit too good to be true, right? Well, in a way, yes. So in today's video, we'll just talk about the POCO X3 Pro and discover the truth behind this new flagship killer. Okay, we'll start off by talking about the performance of the POCO X3 Pro first, because many people are talking about this phone because of that Snapdragon 860 chipset, because it is also the first phone to be using this chipset in itself. And it can run a lot of heavy stuff, especially even heavier games like Genshin Impact at its highest graphical settings. I mean, if you want to check that out, watch it at the top right corner there. And I mean, yeah, combined with 6 gigs of RAM and also 128 gigs of UFS 3.1 storage, the POCO X3 Pro can definitely offer an amazing performance. But I do feel like the POCO X3 Pro only has performance as an advantage, and everything else about the phone though, at this price range, I would say, yeah, it's pretty skewed in a way. And when we look at the screen of the POCO X3 Pro, well, it's actually exactly the same as the POCO X3 NFC from last year. It comes with a 6.67-inch IPS LCD screen with 1080p in resolution, and it can go up to 120Hz refresh rate. Colors are okay. I mean, it's an IPS LCD screen anyway, at least it doesn't have any sort of noticeable color shift or something like that. I mean, screen is fine. And then comes the design. The shape and size of the POCO X3 Pro is exactly the same as the POCO X3 NFC from last year. And this is a brand new color that they have called Metal Bronze, and honestly speaking, it doesn't look good. Look, the original POCO X3 NFC is very similar to this design, but the POCO X3 NFC has these two strips in glossy finish instead of the matte finish on the Pro here. And combined with this iridescent wording POCO right here, I mean, it's just very gaudy to look at, especially with this color. And if I'm ever getting the POCO X3 Pro, I will be sure to cover it up with a solid opaque case right away. And then for the cameras, well, it is exactly the same camera cutout design, and we also have a total of 4 different cameras here. And I feel like this is where the POCO X3 Pro cuts the most corner, because the main camera sensor got a downgrade from a larger sensor on the POCO X3 NFC to a smaller sensor with lower megapixel count on the POCO X3 Pro. Now, I know megapixel counts don't matter, it's the pixel size that matters the most, but it's still something worth pointing out. The overall pictures outdoors look okay, they are fine actually, but once it hits indoors though, the quality starts to drop a lot. And then comes the ultra-wide-angle cameras. The resolution dropped too, but the ultra-wide-angle camera is actually quite subpar in my opinion. It takes some noisy shots even in broad daylight, and I'm just not really happy with its quality right there. And as for the macro cameras, it's using the most bare minimum 2 megapixels sensor with a fixed focus lens, and I'm not gonna use this macro camera at all, because I have tried some other smartphones at this price range with a much better macro camera. So overall camera quality, I would say it's quite disappointing if you compare it with the POCO X3 NFC. Now as for the battery life, POCO stuck the exact same 5160 mAh from the POCO X3 NFC into the POCO X3 Pro. Now, in our battery life test, it lasts for about 12 hours with 1080p and 120Hz refresh rate, and it should last throughout the whole day if there's no gaming involved. As for the charging time, it is also more or less the same as the POCO X3 NFC, since it's using the exact same 33-watt charger, proprietary standard of course, and I just wish that they have went for USB PD standard instead. And finally, MIUI 12. I'm not gonna talk much about it here because we've already talked about it in another phone that is also using MIUI 12. And it's actually the same here anyway. And from what I can say, MIUI 12 definitely has a lot more room to be improved. So yeah, and overall, I think the word flagship killer should not be used here again because it's just kind of misleading and it leaves a very bad taste in my mouth. Even though there's many flagship killers over the years, I don't see flagships getting killed. They're still around and they are doing better than ever now anyways. But with that said, I know many people don't need the best of everything in a smartphone. And that's completely fine. Just know what you are getting before you purchase the phone. Because the POCO X3 Pro that we have here is highly skewed in terms of offering performance but sacrificing many other things in other aspects of a smartphone. For this case, especially the cameras. So at the end of the day, if you want the best in terms of performance at the lowest price also, then the POCO X3 Pro is definitely the choice for you. But if you want a more balanced experience, maybe you can consider the Redmi Note 10 Pro as well. Or maybe you should consider getting the Samsung Galaxy A52 or the Galaxy A72. Those two phones are definitely much more expensive, yes, but they also offer a much better user experience overall, with full access to the Samsung ecosystem and also a lot of fantastic features such as Samsung Pay, Edge Panel, which are two features that I actually use constantly. And also, Samsung promised a total of 3 generations worth of upgrades for those two phones, the Galaxy A52 and A72, and a total of 4 years in terms of security updates for the Galaxy A series of smartphones. So far, I have not seen POCO or any other Android brands actually making such promises and commitments yet. So again, if you want the best of performance that money can buy at this price point, at 999 ringgit for the POCO X3 Pro, go for it! And that's it, that's all we have to share with you about the POCO X3 Pro. Will you actually buy this phone or will you choose some other smartphone? Do you think there's a threshold on how much performance you actually need out of a smartphone? Do leave your comments down in the comment section below, and if you have any questions, we'll answer them there as well. And we'll see you guys in the next video.